Well, hello there. I'm back. Come read with me. We're reading my book, Six of One, Half a Dozen the Other. And by the way, if you're interested, you can find this book and three others that I have on Amazon. Just go to Books, Violet Calkins, and they'll come up and then you can find them. And so let's get right to it. We left off yesterday. Um, We left off yesterday on page 49, and we were reading about it's all relative. And so we're reading about my family background. As I was growing up, there was a picture of my father's mother, my parental grandmother, hanging in the home. It was her wedding portrait. She was a very beautiful woman. We children were told that she was French. Actually, she was my grandfather's niece, or Bert's first cousin. But the truth was hidden until many years later. So my second cousin was also my grandmother. Reminds me of a song I heard once. As a young child, Bert was involved in a mishap which burned his leg and caused a permanent deformity. One of his older brothers was pouring gasoline from a tin can onto an outdoor fire. As he poured the gasoline, the can ignited, and in fear, he tossed it away. It landed near Bert, splashing the flaming gas onto him. His right pant leg burst into flames, badly burning his leg. It must have been terribly painful. For 2 years, he was unable to walk on the burned leg, and the leg muscles drew up in the back so that his leg folded back at a right angle to his thigh. When he was 12, looking very much like a freckled Huckleberry Finn, his leg was surgically repaired at the Baylor Hospital in Texas by the I can't think what they're called. Anyway, the surgeries were paid for by the Rotary Club of Carlsbad, New Mexico, where he lived. He spent 10 months in the hospital and had a series of 8 skin grafts to repair the damaged tissue. He told us that following the operation on his leg, he was put into a cast, and the hospital used sterile maggots, which they put inside his cast to eat away the dead skin. Ugh. He would reach into the cast and scoop them out and throw them away because he could not stand the sensation of them crawling around in there. I don't blame him, I couldn't either. He became really spoiled by the doctors and the nurses during his stay at the hospital. There was a long ramp in front of the hospital with a pole at the bottom of the ramp in the center. Since he was in a wheelchair, he made a game of rolling at full speed down the ramp, grabbing the pole and spinning himself around, then heading up the ramp to do it all again. I guess that makes a lot of fun for a 12-year-old. His game gave the nurses and the doctors fits. His red hair as an adult was straight and thin, and he combed it straight back over his skinny, balding, freckled head. Bert was short, but at 5'6", he looked taller because he was always thin. Daddy's eyes were a cloudy gray, and he had a wry, disdaining, crooked smile that conveyed a better-than-thou attitude. His hair never lost the red, but I am certain that he caused many a gray hair in Mama's auburn locks. My mother catered to Daddy, waiting on him hand and foot. Rather than respect her meekness, Daddy preyed upon it. He seldom showed her any kindness, nor called her by her beautiful name. He used no terms of endearment when he wanted something from my mother. Instead, he called her, "Hey." I grew up resenting his disdainful treatment of her and for her willingness to accept it. He laughed about everything. If a child stumbled and fell or was upset about something, he would laugh out loud and say, "Get up and try it again." He seemed to possess little or no empathy for the misfortunes of others. It was his needs and his wants that took precedence. All others came second, third, or fourth. There was one time, though, that he acted entirely out of character, and it puzzles me still. It was Mother's Day, and the family had all gone to church. Frank, for some unknown reason, had stayed home with Daddy, who almost never went to church with us. When we came home, curly-topped, red-headed Frank, who was about 5 at the time, said to Mama, "We bought you something." And then he ran to get the gift. which turned out to be a new mixer. When she opened it, Mama was certainly surprised and pleased. "That's not all," Frank said excitedly as he ran to get another gift. One after another, Mama opened the unexpected gifts. 5 or 6 of them. All were helpful appliances for the kitchen. They were certainly much needed. That was the only time I ever saw him give her gifts. Daddy had a lot of annoying and hard-to-ignore habits. He sipped his coffee so loudly that people in the next room could hear him. He smacked his lips loudly when eating, which often drove me right up the wall. He jingled keys or loose change in his pockets while he was... Oops, I missed a page, sorry. When he was standing and talking to someone. I think perhaps it was his way of keeping the attention focused on him. He capitalized on his infirmities and minimized the afflictions of others. The scars on his leg and the disability did keep him from military service. He spent about a month in the Army, but insisted that he could wear only cowboy boots because of his leg. He was given a medical discharge shortly thereafter. Though if there was something he wanted to do, his disabilities never seemed to get in his way. He was a skilled woodcrafter, an artist, and a cabinet maker. He had many abilities and talents that could have been put to good use in supporting his family. Unfortunately, most of them were wasted or misdirected. He could have earned a good living for us if he had been ambitious. In fact, to hear him tell it, there was no one who did a job better or a job as well as he did. He himself rarely worked, but he loved to find fault with the work of others. I never heard him offer a word of praise for the work of others, yet he craved praise himself. It was not unusual for him to scrutinize the hard work of others and criticize every detail with a smug, "I could have done it better" attitude. Frankly, though, I believe his ambitions were completely lax when it came to assuming responsibility for his large family. Perhaps he might have been able to do a better job than the others, but arrogance did not pay the bills. He worked from time to time for short periods, but the jobs never lasted. The old saying, "a jack of all trades but a master of none," probably applied as much to him as anyone. He worked in a number of different professions throughout the years. He worked as an animal feeder at the Albuquerque Zoo, wood floor layer, floor finisher and carpenter, housing manager, a milker at a dairy, baker, and grape picker. There were probably others as well, but mostly he stayed at home. When he worked, what he did well. My mother told us about one parquet wood floor that he installed in a ballroom of a large mansion. He put it in piece by piece. He was quite proud of the finished floor and expected abundant praise from the homeowner. He was furious then when the homeowners installed carpet over the intricate work he had done. He was an artist and expected others to appreciate his creative work. I do not know if the homeowners had even asked for a parquet floor or if it was his idea. He had a back injury which was the result of a fall from a 3-legged milk stool while he was working at a dairy in Visalia in 1952. I was 2 years old at the time. It happened during a celebration over the sale of some of the livestock. Alcohol had been involved. One of the other workers, as a prank, jerked the stool out from under Bert. As he fell, the stool hit him between the shoulder blades, injuring him. He had surgery to correct the problem. My folks went on welfare, and a month after the surgery, the welfare department released him to go back to work without even a follow-up examination. Shortly afterward, while driving a truck, he hit a bump in the road and jarred something in his back again. Thrice he went through work rehabilitation classes, but always had an excuse not to succeed in the trade in which he had been trained. He built a cabin cruiser boat in a woodworking class at Fresno City College. He took drafting classes, but according to him, he could not do drafting because his hands sweated. He did draw plans for a service station at Shaw Avenue and 99 Highway. He was paid $300 for the plans. The station is there today. I wonder now what our lives might have been like if he had been ambitious enough to follow through and become an architect. With his artistic talent, he could have been very successful. He liked to socialize with the guys, so he often hung out at the pool halls, used car lots, and bars. He took a part-time job at Palermo Used Auto Sales, driving cars to or from the auto auction. One advantage to working at the car lot was that he often had the use of one of the used cars. For a while, he drove a light blue Ford Fairlane. The car had a leak in the transmission. We were always putting quarts of automatic transmission fluid in. Bert must also have made some cash from time to time, but if he did not share it with the family. Money and the lack of it was a constant source of contention between him and my mother, because he would eat his meals in restaurants while driving to and from the auction. The rest of us would be home eating beans and potatoes, chicken backs, or biscuits and gravy. He kept any money he had secret from Mama and refused to let her look in his wallet. If she dared to try while he was sleeping, he usually found out and the war was on. My parents fought often, and it was usually about money. To say that we struggled is an understatement. We lived on public assistance for most of my growing up years. It was difficult not only because it was embarrassing, but because there was never enough. The welfare system then was designed to make people lazy, shiftless, and strip them of all dignity and hope. It did not reward hard work or ambition. Any money that was made above our assistance check had to be reported on the monthly report. For each dollar earned, one was deducted from the check of the next month. Of course, because of her honesty, Mama reported everything, so it kept us in a constant state of poverty. If we children earned any money from babysitting, field work, side jobs, or school, it was reported in its entirety. This is probably why my father never let her know if he had money. Daddy knew that any money he made would be reported on the monthly report. He dare not risk losing the regular welfare support, because then he would have to keep a regular job. So he kept the money to himself. My husband joked that Daddy's reward in eternity is probably to have to work and support 12 children. I laughed heartily at that picture. If God is just, he's probably right. Hard though it was, the circumstances of my youth were a major contributing factor in the hard driving and tenacious attitudes of the children who sprang up in that environment. Many of us have stronger than usual attitudes of self-sufficiency. Many of my siblings have become, as adults, successful business owners. Some have been leaders in their field. Both of my parents were intelligent and talented in many ways. They had what many people call horse sense or common sense, which is the ability to assess a situation and know instinctively how to respond to it. They were problem solvers, which was a good thing, else we might not have survived. As a child growing up in their wake, I learned many life skills and abilities that have made me a confident and capable adult. My husband was once asked by a friend, if you were stranded on a desert island with one person, who would you like that person there with you? Without hesitation, he answered, Violet, because she is a survivor. Though we had many life skills, I called our household the family zoo because it was rather chaotic, with each person doing his or her own thing. There was little or no organization, though we did have a routine of sorts. Mama would tell us what to do, and we would do it or suffer the consequences. Mama meant business and often went about the house with a string of safety pins hanging down the front of her dress, lying over her ample bosom, and a leather belt draped over her shoulders. The safety pins she collected as she did laundry or housework. When one of us got a rip or tear in our clothes, we would pin it and continue wearing the garment until it could be mended. We did not have many clothes, so we often wore dresses that were pinned together. The belt was to remind any dissidents of their fate to come. Mama never abused us, but she made us mind. She was a firm believer in God and discipline, not necessarily in that order. She refused to tolerate disobedience, disrespect, taking God's name in vain, bad language, or backtalk. Mama was swift in her dealings with us. If we disobeyed, we were punished as soon as the offense was discovered. If we used words that were forbidden in our home, she washed our mouths out with soap, or worse, threatened to use a dirty dish rag. Ugh. If we backtalked her, she slapped our mouth. The offense was seldom repeated a second time. There were no alternative forms of discipline, such as the loss of allowance or being grounded. Frankly, because there was nothing to be grounded from, and we received no allowances. Our primary extracurricular activity was church. She certainly did not take that away. To make us work would have had little effect, as we did plenty of that already. So it came down to good old-fashioned corporal punishment. Sometimes she would require us to go into the yard and cut out a thin branch from a tree and use it in place of the belt. Her discipline was hard but effective. All that Mama was, Daddy was not. He neither served God nor partook in child-raising discipline. Perhaps in retrospect, it was because he had little self-discipline of his own. He was nearly always present, but pretty much ignored what was going on around him. He was passive when it came to any involvement that had to do with the family. If we did something that displeased him, he would get a disgusted look on his face. That was the extent of his correction. Once I remember him losing his patience and yelling at me. Once. "Would you stop that?" he shouted. I was chewing gum and popping it occasionally. It is what teenagers do. It was annoying him. My memories of him are limited to mostly one: him sitting in his recliner with his feet up, watching TV and bossing Mama. He demanded special treatment, special food, special shoes. He only wore cowboy boots, and his meals and drinks hand-carried to him. But never once did I ever hear him a thank you, or offer a kind word. "Hey," he would shout from his chair, "get me a cup of coffee." He refused to sit at the table with the rest of us during meals and never ate the same meals we did, unless, of course, we were having his favorites, such as tacos. He often ate raw hamburger sandwiches, which I was required on occasion to prepare. To this day, it makes my stomach turn just to think about them. With so little male parental guidance, we kids made it pretty tough on Mama. We didn't do it on purpose. We were not bad kids, but with so many of us, I know we were a handful for her. The boys, unfortunately, followed the lead of their male parent and were little help at home. It was pretty much understood that the inside responsibilities belonged to the girls, while the yard work was designated to the boys. It might have been a workable system, except it seemed that no one was required to pick up after themselves. So the house was always a mess, making too much work for the girls. The table was a catch-all for sewing projects or other crafty activities, and was usually piled high with stuff which had to be cleared before meals could be served there. Mama was a good seamstress and sewed many of our clothes for school and church. She made drapes for a house from upholstery fabric she bought from some auction. She upholstered furniture and made our house more livable. The dining table was the best place to work and often was covered with fabric, sewing machines, and patterns. Other times it might be a stack of newspapers or some project one of the children were working on for school. If the clutter on the table could not be moved, we ate anywhere we could find a place to sit. Mama was a woman of strong convictions. She had strong beliefs about what was proper conduct and what was not acceptable for a Christian. In fact, it was her strong principles which often created delicate situations for us children, especially the girls. It was not such a problem for the boys, as their mode of dress was pretty standard, pants and shirts. The girls, on the other hand, had it more difficult. The clothing issue was not an easy one. Though at that time most girls wore dresses, the length was always an issue. Modesty was certainly an important factor, and anything even slightly revealing was banned from our wardrobe. In other words, the knees, chest, shoulders, arms, or back were not to be seen. My mother often quoted poems to us to remind us to do what was right. Many of her sayings were mostly biblical in nature and kept us on the straight and narrow. She had dozens of them and used them more often than the belt, for they were more effective in keeping us in line. One of her favorite scriptures was, "Be sure your sins will find you out." It was a constant reminder to me that no matter what I did, someone was watching and I would eventually be found out. Throughout my life, I have found it to be so true. Although Mama did occasionally spank us, and though she was strict, she mostly used a soft tone with us and taught us by relating our situations to poems or stories from her own childhood. She had wanted to attend college and become a teacher, but she was never able to because of the Depression and because when she was out of high school, her health broke and she was ill for a long time. Then she met and married my father. The poem I remember that she quoted the most often was The Silly Little Grasshopper, and I'm glad I found this today. A tale that she had heard and memorized when she was a child. I was just talking to my great-grandson about this a couple of days ago, but I couldn't find it. The Silly Little Grasshopper. There was a little grasshopper forever on the jump, and as he never looked ahead, he often got a bump. His mother said to him one day when they were in a struggle, "If you don't look before you leap, you'll get yourself in trouble." But the silly little grasshopper despised his wise old mother. He said he knew what was best to do and bade her not to bother. He hurried off across the field, an unknown path he took, when he gave a heedless jump and landed in the brook. He struggled hard to reach the bank. A floating straw he seizes. But quick, a hungry trout darts out and grabbed him and tears him all to pieces. Good little boys and girls, heed well your mother's wise advice. Before you move, think carefully. Before you speak, think twice. And it's author unknown.